Thank you so much. I can't tell you how honored I am. Thank you, National Press Foundation. Thank you, Sissy. I want to thank the entire CQ Roll Call family, current and former. I bet there's an alum at just about every table here. I know there are a couple on the head table. But I want to single out the editors who helped me on these stories: Kat Camia, Megan Scully, Patrick Pexton, Ryan Kelly, our data guru. A shout out to our publisher and chief content officer, Josh Resnick, to Tim Huang, chairman and CEO of Physical Note, which bought CQ Roll Call last year. I'm grateful to work for a news organization that gives us the time to pursue investigative and enterprise reporting. And last but certainly not least, I want to thank my family, starting and ending for now with my wife Sarah and my daughter Sophia. I want to quickly give you an overview, just a quick description of the 3 stories I submitted for this award. Last year, number one, there was, as you probably recall, a rash of military accidents, ships and planes colliding, deadly accidents. Hawks in Congress did not want to waste a crisis, and they capitalized on this by saying that without an increase in defense spending, we can't do anything about our military falling apart and all these accidents. Well, I dug into it and found out, number one, accidents had been decreasing, as a matter of fact, for several years. And number two, there was absolutely no evidence that a higher defense budget was necessarily going to solve the problem. The second story was about earmarks. You know, most of you, those are the special interest spending projects that were for a long time inserted in legislation, but they basically only benefited the politician and the contractor who advocated it. About 9 years ago, Congress banned those, putting those in bills. But they found an interesting way to basically outsource it to the Pentagon, and they set up a special fund over there. And I found out that over 9 years, they had delivered more than $2 billion to this fund for projects that the military, let's just say, didn't know they wanted. The third story was about a class of destroyers, Navy warships, called the Zumwalts. They cost $8 billion per ship and counting. Congress started ordering them 13 years ago. They're still not done building even the first one of these 3 ships. They are still uncertain what the mission is. You know, whistleblowers and internal documents, these are the lifeblood of journalism. And I've had my share of stories, luckily, that have been derived from these kind of sources. But it struck me that for these 3 stories, the building blocks were materials that any American could read online. Granted, I had to pick through them, talk to people to get context, hopefully translate it into a compelling narrative and all that, but the documents were out there. And so that leads me to another thank you I want to express to a group of people and institutions that almost never get thanked. And that is the lawmakers of years gone by who had the foresight to require that federal agencies make certain reports public. In the world of defense, I'm talking about reports on weapons testing, on weapons cost, on accident rates, on things of that nature. These lawmakers also created institutions that, in turn, were able to generate reports about whatever they felt like reporting on, whatever they got tips about, or whatever Congress wanted them to look into. And I'm talking about the Government Accountability Office, the Congressional Research Service, the Congressional Budget Office, the Inspectors General in all the departments and agencies with their auditors and their criminal investigators. These people, they're not flawless, but they give the public nonpartisan, objective information about what are increasingly complex issues. Those people toil away in obscurity. But even about military matters, the public can find out things as long as they're not unclassified, and some things sometimes that are classified. So it piqued my interest last month when the president had a cabinet meeting in which he said it was, quote, insane that Pentagon Inspector General reports be made public. He wasn't talking about secret reports, because those aren't made public. He was talking about unclassified reports, basically about the war in Afghanistan. And he turned to the acting Deputy Secretary of Defense, Patrick Shanahan, and said, "I don't want that to happen anymore, Mr. Secretary. You understand that?" And Shanahan nodded. Well, the president may not want it, but it's the law that these reports, when they're unclassified, be made public. And it's the law because somebody at some point thought it needed to be made a law. And we are all better off for that. The president's comments about the Inspector General report are part of a larger campaign to, number one, limit the public's access to its government's information, and number two, to discredit credible sources. The Washington Post editor Marty Barron put it really well in a speech at the National Press Club recently. He's talked about a concerted campaign to, quote, disqualify independent arbiters of fact and obliterate the very idea of objective truth, close quote. This is an effort to sow distrust not just in journalists, in law enforcement, in intelligence agencies, in scientists, in all nonpartisan sources of facts, so that, guess what? We believe the politicians. Trump didn't create this tactic, but he's taken it to a new level. And defending transparency and press freedom, it's not a partisan statement, and it shouldn't be construed as one. My biggest worry, that the public is buying these lies about truth. We are far from perfect in the press corps, but the biggest fake news story of all is the idea that truthful reporting is fake news. Now, I was going to talk about some of the things that are happening around the world, but we've heard about them here tonight. We've heard moving testimony about the Capital Gazette. We've heard reference to the case of Jamal Khashoggi. Institutions like the National Press Foundation need to keep shining a light on these facts, but for us individual reporters, we need to stay above the fray. Our job is just to get the stories right, because that's what we do. And I just want to leave you with a quote that really moved me. Many of you read the op-ed that John Dingell, the late congressman from Michigan, wrote. On the day he died, he dictated it to his wife on February 7th. And in it, he expressed a hope for the American people. "I pray," he said, "God gives you the wisdom to understand the responsibility you hold in your hands." He didn't pray for the American people to do something or get something. He just prayed for them to understand the responsibility they hold in their hands. And that's a great prayer for Americans. It's a great prayer for journalists, too, because we have a very awesome responsibility. And guess what? I'm confident that we are up to the task. Thank you.